Hi, everyone. We are giving 1 minute for everyone to join. Hi, everyone. Few more seconds and we'll be ready to start. This is the moment to text your colleagues, to text your counterparts and tell them there's this amazing session coming up. Come and join us and have a discussion. Although we already have very good quorum. And in the meantime, feel free to start using the chat, introduce yourself, where are you joining, and what are your expectations for today's conversation? And on that note, I think that we can start. Hello, everyone. My name is Ana Saldarriaga, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of We Are All Human, a foundation dedicated to advance equity for all, with a particular focus on the Hispanic population in the United States. Today is the second of a 6-part capacity building series. During the first session, we covered the pillar number 1 of the Hispanic promise, investing in the future, preparing the next generation of sustainable success. In today's session, we will be sharing best practices and real-life examples on how organizations and individuals are bringing to life the 6 pillars of the Hispanic promise. For those of you who might not be familiar, the Hispanic promise is the first of its kind national corporate pledge to prepare, hire, promote, retain, celebrate, and buy from Hispanics in the workplace. Launched at the World Economic Forum in 2019, and the result of joint effort of multiple Hispanic organizations, the Hispanic promise is a non-legally binding sign of intention, a call to action, if you will, of business leaders and companies of corporate America to create a more inclusive work environment for Hispanics. To date, more than 300 companies have signed the pledge, and if you haven't signed it, this is the moment where we are formally inviting you to join us. And if you already did, then please help us spread the word and bring other signatory members to join the movement that we're building together. Like I mentioned, this is the second of the series. The first one was on the first pillar. This is on the second pillar. And we will be hosting an insightful discussion on the pillar of hire. In this pillar, we aim to create the pipeline of Hispanic talent at all career levels in order to facilitate transition from higher education into the highest levels of corporate America. Today, we will explore how corporations can increase Hispanic representation, including outreach efforts to Hispanic serving institutions and community organizations, as well as creating more inclusive workplace cultures that support the success of Hispanic employees. As attendees, you can expect to learn practical and applicable information from industry experts on how to develop effective strategies for talent development, diversity, and inclusion. Now, a panel will be nothing without its panelists, and therefore it is my absolute pleasure and honor to introduce to you our stellar composition for today. Starting with Alex Martinez. He is the Senior Director of Global Diversity, Talent, Innovation, and Strategic Engagements at Nike, where he leads diverse representation programs in collaboration with many other stakeholders. Then we have Kimberly Meneses, a recruiter at ThoughtWorks who excels at building meaningful connections with individuals on both personal and professional levels. Then we have Karina Camacho as Head of Talent Acquisition for North America at Beam Suntory, with more than 20 years of experience in diverse industries, including distribution, pharmaceuticals, CPG, and wine and spirits. Now, for me, I'm very happy to say that I don't have a lot of information on who is the people that are watching today's webinar. So if you want to introduce yourself, feel free to do so as the conversation evolves. Now, starting with the questions, I will be asking some questions to the panelists, but feel free to put in the chat what are the things that you would like to ask them directly, and depending on time, I will be able to have a few of them feature for everyone to answer. Otherwise, you can always use LinkedIn to further expand the conversation. Now, given that the number of Hispanic workers in the labor force has grown from 10.7 million in the 90s to 29 million in 2020, and it's projected to reach 35.9 million by 2030, it is imperative to talk about the way that we connect and reach out to this population. So with that in mind, I'd like to start asking Karina, what are some examples of best practices, programs, initiatives that you have seen in your company or otherwise implementing to advance this pillar of hiring?
Hi there. Sorry, I realized I was on mute. So D&I is embedded in our recruitment process, you know, from a moment a position goes live to when the individual is onboarded. So we have a sourcing strategy, and, you know, this is a strategy that we align with our senior leaders at Beam Suntory. So not only do we have a sourcing strategy in place, but we also made some changes along the way. The first one being equitable sourcing. So basically what that means is once the position goes live, we are 100% focused on proactively sourcing diverse talent for all of our open positions. This will allow us not only to provide a diverse slate of candidates to our hiring managers, but it also helps us build those strong relationships with that pool. Our goal always is to provide a diverse slate of candidates. And what that means is at least one female candidate and one diverse candidate, not the same person, that's being presented and also interviewed by our diverse interview panel. And also we are actively out there, right? It's a team effort. We have an awesome D&I team, as well as we have our EIG groups, our senior leaders that are, you know, there's definitely an appetite to get out there because, as you said, this population is growing. It's just really getting out there and networking, building those meaningful partnerships we have existing. We're also exploring new partnerships, but just getting out there, networking and spreading the word. And it's not only just focused on D&I, but there's also that brand awareness piece. You know, many of you probably see the portfolio, but didn't know that we go by Beam Suntory. So that's another opportunity for us as well. So it's definitely a team effort, and, you know, we're definitely trending in the right direction. So that's just some examples that we have here in place at Beam Suntory.
Totally. And I really like to emphasize on that best practice of making sure that brand awareness is at the top of the priorities so diverse applicants know about your opportunities. Otherwise, the first bottleneck is gone. How about you, Kimberly? What are the best practices that you have seen?
Well, Karina took a lot of the words out of my mouth. We do a lot of the same initiatives. I would say one of the biggest assets that we have is our ERG group that we use. And a lot of our applicants that we do go source for are a lot of applicants that are referrals that people know from word of mouth. And, you know, speaking at events that we give a lot of our thought workers opportunities to go to. They then connect us with those people that they meet. We also have a lot of internal programs that help people grow in certain positions that they never thought of or never considered in the past, such as our FYE mentorship team, which is basically the first life cycle that you're at ThoughtWorks. We give you the opportunity to have one-on-ones, check-ins. You have a whole community behind you answering any questions that you have, any concerns that you've had along the way, any bottlenecks that you've had in your role. And we're just really here to support each other. So a lot of that goes into what we do at ThoughtWorks.
Perfect. And what about you, Alex?
Well, I love what Karina and Kimberly were mentioning. I think having those systemic checks and balances in place are extremely useful to make sure you're creating a diverse pipeline, you're bringing in the right candidates. The candidates are seeing themselves in who they're interviewing with, and they can see themselves at the company that you're in. So therefore, you're just increasing that brand awareness from start to finish. So I love all of those things. I would just build on a couple things. One, as we think about increasing representation, obviously that's throughout the organization at various levels. But what we have found and what we continue to see and what I've seen in my experience are just tremendous gaps at the leadership level, and making sure you have the right representation at the top to reflect the representation of the broader community, and making sure that matches to your demographics. And so very strategically and specifically, we have gone for specific partnerships and organizations that are really going to help focus and hyper focus on building relationships with talent at the more executive level. And so we've partnered with great organizations such as the Alumni Society as an example, right? Where we're curating specific events in partnership with them in some of our key cities, right? Because we need to go after Latinos and Hispanics across the country, or even outside of the US, right? And to do that, you have to get outside of your comfort zone. So at Nike, a lot of the historic hiring has happened in Portland, right? But the truth is we continue to build out our key city strategy in other parts of the country where there is a lot of Latino population and representation in key cities like New York or LA or Chicago and other cities in addition to that. So we want to meet the talent where they are, and we need to utilize partnerships and organizations where we can build on those relationships and continue to increase our pipeline. And even if it's what I would call ambassador recruiting, right? So we're trying to build brand awareness with those key executives, but at the same time, especially in the environment that we're in right now, right? We're not hiring much. I think a lot of companies have slowed down hiring. So what are you doing to build relationships? What are you doing to build pipelines and essentially create connections for leaders in your organization? So when the time is right and you do have an open opportunity, though that talent will already be at the forefront, and you won't have to go through that entire process, but people will know, hey, I met this incredible Latino marketer a few months back, and now I have this role and I have that person top of mind. So we're trying to really focus on that, because representation really does start at the top to then better reflect across all the levels within the organization. That's just one example that I wanted to provide.
No, and that's incredibly helpful on two levels, at least for me. One, and I love to hear what participants are taking as you share. For me, I'm hearing a lot about the systemic approach to intentional hiring. And the way that I heard you say was about how can we make the environment feel welcoming from the beginning, making sure that the person that you're interacting with or interviewing with makes you feel represented, and at the very least makes you feel that you belong. And number two is make sure that you create more than a recruitment strategy, that you create a relationship-based strategy. Because even in times of freeze or of hiring freezes, that you're able to create those long-lasting relationships that, again, even if a person applies and does not get the job or wants to apply, but there are not opportunities, they continue to be engaged with the organization. And if and when the moment arrives, you have an army of ambassadors ready to grow your company's goals. So absolutely gems, and thank you so much for the three of you on providing already those nuggets of information. But then we get into the interesting question of measurement, because as we talk about systemic change, I'm curious to know if and how you are tracking advancement in this pillar in your organizations. For example, Karina, do you do it?
Yes, we look at our data on a monthly basis. We filter by gender, we filter by diversity. We share this data with our senior leaders in collaboration with our HR business partners. We also, we track, our open, our filled, how are we trending, where are their gaps, where are their opportunities, and from there come up with a sourcing strategy, again, in partnership with our hiring managers. I'm trying to think of what else we do. So for diversity, for our diverse slates, for example, we do measure at the point of the interview. And I'm trying to think of some other things that we do, but we do measure and we do share that data with our business so that they have visibility, how we're trending, where are the gaps, where are opportunities. From there, come up with a sourcing plan for their open jobs. So yes, we do look at it on a monthly basis for sure.
Good. That believe it or not, it is already way better than what many other organizations are doing. Because every time that I have asked this question to other leaders, they're like, yeah, we do have a lot of metrics that we track in recruitment, but we don't necessarily track the diversity across the ethnicity. And like they, of course, have some internal or external reasons as to why they don't do it. But the fact that there are some companies that show that it is possible and that it is getting done, it's already a good plus. Alex, how are your experiences in this department?
No, I love Karina for sharing that, because yes, absolutely. Our entire TA team and sourcing team are very much focused on getting into those specific demographics, right? Because we want to know those points of entry. We want to know those pipelines. We want to know how people are coming into the organization. But to Karina's point, also just tracking what that experience is like, right? As they interview, what percentage of those individuals by race, gender, ethnicity are making it to the final interview, and then ultimately how are they getting placed and where in the organization are they getting placed, right? So you can start to really shed light on some of those biases. A lot of times when it's a final, you have a final slate of candidates and you don't necessarily land a Latino or a Latina in that final spot to get the job. Well, then, maybe there's potentially some education or opportunity there with hiring managers in terms of we'll identifying what maybe some of those biases are in terms of final placement. The other thing too, and I would just say from an organizational standpoint, Nike definitely is tracking representation across all levels. In fact, every year we're holding ourselves accountable by putting that into our yearly impact report. So you're able to see if you go into externally, exactly. So if you go into that purpose and impact report, you'll see the breakdown by every level within our organization. How are we doing for our director levels and above? How are we doing across every single individual level within our organization? How is that broken out by race, by gender, ethnicity, et cetera? You'll be able to see that. So we're holding ourselves accountable for year-over-year progress on that. But the other thing I will also mention, and just something for us to all think about, is just representation into the organization and representation at the organization at various levels. Where is your Hispanic and Latino talent, right? Is that talent being pigeonholed in certain departments or functions within the organization, or are they truly being brought into key strategic roles, with critical roles within the organization, right? And that could be across multiple levels. But if you find yourself in your organization tracking that information and that data, but yet you find the majority of your Latino employees are going into manufacturing or operations or even HR, right? Well, is there an opportunity to spread that out across the different dimensions of your organization, right? There's various functions, there's finance, there's strategy, there's marketing. These are key critical parts of the organization. And if you don't have Latino talent in those parts of the organization, then that's a tremendous gap, right? And then you can then hyper-focus and think about, well, which organizations can I partner with to close that gap, right? Is it partnering with an ASE? Is it partnering with an alpha, right? That is hyper-focused on a particular function or organization. So I think of representation actually at two levels, right? Are you making sure your overall demographics are reflective of the population? And is that consistent across all various levels within your organization? But also, as you look up how your organization is structured, do you have that same representation across the different functions and the different departments within your overall company?
Absolutely. And I would like to complement a lot of your thoughts with something that we have noticed that We Are All Human, and is how to track when the diverse populations are intersectional. For example, when a lot of applicants are disclosing their backgrounds, when companies when they have the option to auto-identify themselves, they don't have the multiple options to put more than ones. They just put like Hispanic, Latino, other, and then others. And then like what happens when you're Hispanic and Black, or Hispanic and Asia, or all three and all. And what we've noticed that tends to happen is that they prefer to put the other ones first, and then they will put Hispanic as the last one, depending, of course, on each case. And therefore, we lose a lot of data points just because we are not necessarily aware if the way that we're asking the questions to track the data, it is designed in a way that it feels inclusive for the Hispanic population, that is at the intersectionality of other ethnicities. So that is a piece of nugget for all of us to also continue to get better as we continue to increase our information and our knowledge of Hispanic identity. Okay, so now, we also understand that this intersectionality topic is important because we notice that there are some barriers that the Hispanic population and other ethnicities has faced when it comes to entering the workplace and advancing their careers in their workplace. We need to understand that Hispanic representation in the labor force has been negatively impacted by many barriers, such as insufficient bargaining power, gaps in legal protections, discrimination, social norms that result in low-wage jobs, access to education, limited employer-sponsored benefits, labor law violations, etc., etc., etc. So understanding that there are just some systemic barriers that Hispanic people have had, we also understand that there are many barriers once you enter the labor force. Do you know at firsthand or from other experiences, what are some of these barriers and what are the things that your company has done to advance or to overcome these barriers? So identify the barriers and what have you know to overcome those? And then, of course, the question, we can start with Karina.
I think for us right now, what we're seeing is we are providing a diverse slate of candidates, but the conversion rates are definitely lower than what we're presenting to our hiring managers. So it's really, I think, just partnering with the hiring managers. We understand that, we have those nice to haves versus the must haves. So I think for us right now is getting into the nitty gritty, making sure that we're assessing all of our candidates consistently, making sure that we're assessing them using the same competencies. So I don't know if it's a barrier. I think it's more, just, coaching, mentoring the hiring managers, because, we understand everyone. Some of the positions that we have, they're plugged into the organization immediately. They're embedded immediately. Sometimes you don't have that opportunity to really train someone to get them up to speed in our ways of working and our technology, et cetera. So I think for us, that's an opportunity for us, and we are working on that. Again, really focused on what does it take to be successful here, not only focused on the technical hard skills, but let's focus on those competencies. Do they have what it takes to get up to speed very quickly within this organization? So definitely an opportunity for us, and we recognize it, working very closely with our HR business partners, our talent management team, as well as the hiring managers. So that would be one that I could identify as of right now.
Yeah. If you have more at the end, feel free to tell us, because I think this is one of the questions where I believe there's a lot of interest in understanding more. But I absolutely agree with you, particularly because, again, also our research shows that Hispanic people are one of the most hardworking people that there is in the work market, in the labor force. However, our intrinsic motivation is very strong, but when it comes to confidence level and projection and owning the room, we have a gap in the way that the organization sees our potential. And we need to make sure that gap gets reduced, and understanding why that is something that we will be very curious to continue exploring further. How about you, Kimberly?
Yeah, so for us, it's a couple of different things. The first one, we are a tech company, so we do hire for a lot of niche roles where the pools aren't as diverse as we would love to have them. So a couple ways that we tackle this is internally, we want to upskill people before we go look hiring elsewhere. So we look at, the groups that we have, the roles that they're in, and how we can get them from point A to point B. So that way we could keep them in certain projects. Other ones are that we do, also, and I'm so sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
No, it's
okay. Another thing that we do is we don't necessarily need college degrees for all of our roles. And so even if you don't, we offer people or we don't offer, but we let them know, there's boot camps available. There's some schooling that you can do. There's certificates that you can take that don't necessarily need to cost a lot of money for you to get this position. And if for some reason you don't get the role within the first round of interviews that we have, we provide you all the feedback and all the necessary tools to then go out, do your best, do your research, kind of upskill yourself a little bit. And then in 6 months, they usually come back and get hired that second round, which is something we really love. And again, it's more of word of mouth. So we make those relationships. We let people know that, this isn't like a one-shot opportunity. You have multiple chances to come back here And we'll obviously always give you the best feedback, the best tools, and want to help you in any way we can.
Absolutely. This is very connected with the first pillar of the Hispanic Promise, which is prepare. Because I don't know if you know, the Hispanic Promise didn't have that pillar. We just started with hiring. And then we realized that one of the biggest barriers for hiring was the prepare part, like you rightfully mentioned, like how can we upskill the Hispanic population to be able to even access the opportunity. So you can see already a trend here. And again, an invitation to continue working with institutions and like with the community directly, grassroots, as you were mentioning, because we don't need college degrees for a lot of the job that we need to do, that we need to cover in organizations these days. How about you, Alex?
Well, I love the points that both Karina and Kimberly mentioned. The skills first mindset is a huge cultural barrier. And I want to double down on Kimberly's point, because yes, we are now assessing certain roles and specific roles that do not require any degree, right? Because even the educational requirement is a huge barrier for underrepresented people of color, specifically our Latinx population. And so while we are making a lot of progress, and I think a lot of other companies are making really good progress on internship placement and partnering with HSIs and partnering with other organizations, Hispanic organizations, to bring talent in that do have that education and those requirements. There's also a huge pool of talent, specifically Latino talent, that don't have educational requirements that are needed for certain jobs, right? So how are we changing the mindset? And I think it goes back to Karina's point around the hiring manager, right? There's a lot of bias there in terms of what hiring managers expect of somebody to come in with the role. Is it the years of experience? Is it the specific skills that they have to have? And more so just at least a bachelor's degree, right? I think a lot of even entry-level jobs have bachelor's level degree requirements. I think some mid-level degrees also have a master's degree requirement, right? And if you think about just overall the population that have attained those requirements, it's not as high as you would think. And so I think the skills first mindset is a huge cultural barrier, but we need to do a better job of educating hiring managers around some of those things, right? And I think it goes back to that consistency systemically that Karina was mentioning around making sure it's competency-based and skills-based, making sure those questions are very much focused on what does the person have the potential to do in the job, and not what you expect them to do or expect them to have coming into the job. So that's first and foremost. I think there's other biases too that hiring managers might have, such as the affinity bias or the similar to me bias, where they just expect that they can hire somebody who looks like them or who reminds them of them, and they know they can trust them to do the job, right? But how do we think outside of that and help influence hiring managers to think differently about talent, or to give talent an opportunity and a chance to really thrive based on that skills first mindset? So there's that piece. And I think another thing that we're also hearing too from what we call our Nike United network, our Latino and Friends network, that's our ERG. What we're hearing is a lot of bias around accents, and how sometimes the communication skills might be misconstrued because of someone's accent, right? And we're hearing a lot of that feedback around, well, they don't necessarily think I communicate well, and they don't think necessarily I'm fit for the job because maybe there's a little bit of a bias there. So we have to help educate our hiring managers and just our leaders in general around that it's not about exactly what you say, but how you say it, or how you're positioning your brand. And it's not about el acento, right? It's about the fact that people have proven they can do the job. How do we help internally give them opportunities to be more mobile within the organization? How do we make sure it just, even as I mentioned, as we're going into a little bit of a hiring slowdown, how do we think about the internal talent that we have and making sure we're giving them opportunities and reducing barriers for internal talent to move around? You have to, just as much as you make sure your slates are diverse just coming into the organization, you have to also make sure that those slates are diverse in terms of your succession planning process, in terms of special projects and rotational opportunities and stretch opportunities for employees, to make sure that you have Latinos on those slates. And I think of it very much as what we hear a lot about, right? 1 in 3 in the next 20 years, right? So hello, hola. So you have to make sure your slates also reflect that, both coming into the organization and also internally as you move talent around in the organization.
I couldn't have said it better. And I do think that organizations that have a lot of different accents in their halls, it's the perfect reflection that you're serving more than one community and that you have more than one customer. So I will look at it as a very valuable asset for sure, says the person with the strongest accent. Now I'm going to chime in on that last comment of in terms of hiring freeze, we have to pay attention to the promotion, the internal mobility inside organizations, because this is a trend that we've been seeing, of course, these days. And we have someone from our participants that is asking a question related to this, because she's asking, what is the best way to work around the people that are holding you back from success? This means that I am a worker and my work reflects that, but I see a lot of people that gets promoted without putting the work. So we see a barrier here that, okay, there's not a lot of hiring potential happening outside, so my only option is to grow inside, but then I have these barriers internally that it's preventing me to advance and to get higher into another position. Do you have any advice for her or any guidance on how to navigate this? Anyone?
Yeah, I can kind of kick it off from a recruiter's perspective. Personally, what I do is really put a lot of emphasis on what it's like to network within. So not just outside the organization, but within. Really get to know the people that are making those hiring decisions, what they're looking for in their competencies, in their attributes for this role, and how you can ask for feedback and let them know, like, you are interested in moving up. What are ways that you can go about doing that? What are the areas that you're missing? What are the areas that you can upskill in? And what are the tools that they're offering to help you get to that point? And, you know, if it's the person blocking you, have an honest conversation with, you know, your HR representatives, letting them know that this is kind of something that's holding you back and you would love to stay with your company, but how can you kind of go around this obstacle in the future or currently?
Yeah, I would definitely add to that. I would definitely have the conversation with your line manager, because we all know that there's a lot of work to be done, even if recruitment slows down. Is there an opportunity to shadow someone? Is there an opportunity to work on a project? Definitely look at your development plan. Is there something that, what are your strengths and how you can make that better? If there is an opportunity, leverage your manager, leverage your team on getting that feedback so that you can work on that skill set, to get you from A to B. But I would say definitely, have those conversations. Don't wait for a mid-year. Don't wait until the year end. Have those conversations. Make sure you check in with your line manager. Because we're kind of slowing down our recruitment as well. We're also finding opportunities. We're looking at internal talent. And to add to Alex, yes, once we bring those people in, how do we retain those people? Making sure that, that they're being exposed, they're working on those projects, and, and we're working on, a robust development plan for every individual.
Fantastic. Alex, something to add, or I can just continue?
Those are great points. I think my only add to that, I wanted to focus on the development plan, because yes, I think all of us need to be proactive around our own development plans and how we want to progress and what we would like to do. What are our career aspirations? I think a lot of times as Latinos, we keep our heads down, we do hard work, and we hope the work speaks for itself. But the truth is, you need sponsorship, you need mentorship, and you need a focus on development. And so who are those individuals who can sponsor you, even outside of your line manager or organization, right? If there's an interest you have, let's say in marketing, right? Who in marketing can you find to get to know and to sponsor you, right? Which means, hey, I have a little bit of availability and capacity. I've got 10 hours a week. Can I help you on this project, right? And think about a +1. And that way you're doing a special project, or you're doing something to build capability in that space. And then you now have somebody who can sponsor you and say, this person did a great job with that +1. Now I want to take them under my wing and help shepherd them into a different part of the organization. And now you're building capabilities outside of your normal day-to-day responsibilities.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that from my experience, what I can tell to this participant, and again, if you have other questions, feel free to put them in. We'll try to squeeze them in the limited time we have, is that first, yes, continue focusing your output. the work speaks by itself and it will get noticed. It gets noticed for sure. But then once you are making sure that that is taking place, just when you're hiring someone, you need to continue cultivating advocacy for yourself. When you're applying for a job and you're in an interview, you prepare so much to showcase your skills and your experience and your ability. Just because you got into the company, it doesn't mean that you lost that ability. You continuously need to keep toning that ability and making sure that the work and the contributions that you're doing are visible not only to your line manager, but to the people around the ecosystem that it's key in those decision-making processes. And I feel this is where a lot of Hispanic people tend to forget. We're very, very hard workers, and we get so focused in the job that then just advocating for ourselves becomes like an extra task that I don't want to do. And we cannot afford this. You always have to have that mindset on at all times. And once you, of course, do that, then I will apply all of the amazing feedback that we have heard from our panelists about is relationship building. Learn to be comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. We are very community driven, so we don't want to create like unnecessary conflict, which is great. I personally like that about our community. That being said, it is important that if we notice that there's someone that might be blocking something, just have a conversation, be open about it. We tend to be very candid, but we cannot be shy. We cannot be shy about it. So thank you so much for those questions.
I did want to add one thing, and this is something I recently learned, which is hilarious, is if you are doing outstanding things, if you are, doing projects that you're mentored, or you have a supporter, another person seeing this, document it. Document everything that you've done to prove and showcase when you are looking to get that promotion and move to the next step, and say, these are all the things that you have done, instead of trying to remember at the top of your head, hey, yes, I sort of did this, I sort of did that. So you can show them, yes, you're a hard worker and this is what you've been doing.
Totally. I heard that tip that works very well also in those days that you're feeling low. So you have like I've done good job type of jar. So when you're feeling down, then no, actually, I received this compliment. I did this. I'm a good person. I contribute. Because we all have them.
Screenshot my compliments. It's okay.
Exactly. And then like people have like this folder. I don't remember. There's a name for that folder, but it was like, I don't know, like the compliments folder. I don't know, but do it. I don't have it, but I will. So now we're reaching to the end of the panel, which is sad. I want to continue asking. I want to continue learning. But of course, like I mentioned, you can continue the conversation virtually, and we hope to see you in all of the other seminars and the other webinars that are coming up. But to close, I'd like to understand what are the resources and the support that you need in order to help advance this pillar within your organization. It can be either from the Hispanic Promise community or from your company organizational leadership. And for this, we can start with Karina.
Okay, I would say more opportunities to speak on these types of platforms. I think there's a lot of organizations out there that are super passionate and they really believe in what they do. And I have a lot of love and respect for that. So just getting out there, having those conversations, meeting new people, partnering, meaningful partnerships, leveraging your resources internally. If you have an EIG group, leverage your team, D&I as well, leverage your senior leaders. But I would say more opportunity, brand awareness, right? Like Nike, everybody knows Nike, right? As soon as you say Nike, you know who Nike is, but when you hear Beam Suntory, it's, it's kind of like, well, what do they do? But once you're out there having those conversations and they see your portfolio, they know what you do. So I guess more exposure, more opportunities, and more, I would say more opportunities to network, right? Get out there. Obviously it shows that we are better together.
Perfect. What about you, Alex?
Well, I will tell Karina, just my travels through Louisville definitely has taken me through several wine and spirits. So there's definitely brand awareness for Beam Suntory from my standpoint. No, but in seriousness, I think I fully agree with Karina's point around how do we just collectively as a community come together and share some of those best practices, lessons learned. I think a lot of times we get very focused on, I need to find the best talent for my organization, and it becomes a very competitive nature as normal, and that's perfectly normal human reaction. But the truth is, to grow this community, we have to grow the pie together. This is not a zero-sum game. It's not a my ad is your loss. It's how do we add together, right? How do we grow the community together? And so sharing those best practices are extremely helpful in any type of forums and platforms we can do to do that, right? I'm happy to share anything I've learned, not just my experience currently at Nike, but in other organizations that I've worked for, and other experiences that I've had, and other people I've spoken to and networked with that have shared best practices with me that I now actively employ and implement at my company, right? So there's a couple things. And I would say also, one of the things that has been lacking from just a lot of the feedback we hear from our employee resource group and our community is the question always becomes, when are we as a community going to have a burning platform? And my answer to that is always, this is the burning platform. If you look at the future demographics, if you look at the burning need, the purchasing power, et cetera, there's so many data points, and yet there's a lack of awareness across all of our organizations with some of our most senior leaders that maybe aren't privy to that, or they just don't have that insight or awareness. So how do we bring a very data-driven approach and those data-driven insights to influence senior leadership so that they truly understand, I'm not just trying to hire somebody because they are a specific demographic or reflect a community. I'm trying to hire for the future of my business. I'm trying to grow my business through this community. And how do you help make that connection point to some of the senior leaders? So if people have best practices or lessons that they've learned from that respect, I'm all ears. Like we want to bring that to them so that there's just a common understanding as to why this is urgent now and why we need to continue to focus on this for the future.
Perfect. And Kimberly?
Yeah, I would say our biggest barrier that or how everyone can help is brand awareness. You know, we're not as big as Microsoft, not as big as Nike, but we'd like to be there. And we want folks to know that, you know, experience isn't everything. You have the skill sets regardless. Don't be afraid to apply, and don't be afraid to start a conversation with us. We're not going to say no. We want to hear from everyone, especially from our own community, and we want to help in any way. So I think that would be our biggest one.
Well, then I'm very glad to remind you that this is exactly the reason why We Are All Human was born. We want to provide that platform for organizations that are willing to support Hispanic talent, that they have that platform. So one of the best ways to do it is by signing the Hispanic Promise, which I'm sure that all of you will be making sure that you have done it. So if you haven't, go to our website and find more information. But the other ways also is to make sure that we curate an ecosystem. And the way that we do this is by uniting the messages that Latinos have and making sure that companies have a unified tool to send that message across. And for that, I also suggest that you go to the website and go to the Hispanic Heritage Month toolkit that we have created, and make sure that your company visibility is showing and reflecting that you're celebrating Hispanic heritage, that Hispanics are welcome in the organization, and that with concrete actions that you all, again, find in that toolkit that is free of use, by the way. So do it in your organizations and share with your colleagues to make sure that we have, again, that unified message that Latinos are welcome and Latinos are here. And just to close, I also would like to say that the main takeaway of this last point is, for me, as Latinos, we cannot wait for that burning platform to just come up to us. The burning platform is already here, and it's now. And like what Kimberly was saying is, if you feel that you are capable of doing a job, even if you don't feel that all of the bullet points are checked, apply. Latinos, just like women, we see, oh, there are 10 bullet points. I am 9 out of 10. I don't have the last one. Not for me, I have to continue waiting. No, make sure that you are your own advocate and that you are opening the doors for you and for the others after you, because there is room to grow in every position. So if there is one message that you need to get out of this webinar, is apply, be confident, and make sure that you open the doors for others. So thank you very much. I hope to see you in the next webinar series that we're going to host, and looking forward to keep the conversation alive virtually. Bye.